I think there's a fair and interesting discussion about when should you draft a running back, but quite frankly, I've talked about that to death a little bit on this channel. You can go back and find me talking about that. I made a whole video, in fact, talking about exactly that. I think for this video, I'm simply just going to talk about Zamir White and what I like about him, why I think this is an interesting selection and a player who can help the Raiders. Because listen, does a running back matter as much as a casual football fan might think they do, or especially a fantasy football fan might think they do? No, they just don't. There's a lot of evidence to suggest, running backs don't matter as much as people think they do, which is why they're falling later in rounds and why they're not getting big contracts anymore, with only a few exceptions of the top end guys. But still, there is value in a running back, and I think Zamir White can be someone who can add value to this Las Vegas Raiders football team. So let's talk about the value he will add. So first, let's start off with a play like this. One thing that really just jumps out at you when you're watching White is just his power. He is someone who is physical, and you can certainly see that on film, where the way this play is going to work, it's going to be a run to the offense's left, so towards the bottom of the screen, and I'm circling an Auburn player as he is the guy who I want to highlight on this play, because watch what he's going to do. Look, as you see, he fills this gap nicely, so while White has a little window where he can run through, he can gain some yards. He's probably not going to gain a ton of yards, and just spoiler alert, he isn't going to break this and get a touchdown or anything. I'm not showing his career highlights or anything, just what he can do. And so you have a player who's going to try and make a tackle, but watch what White accomplishes here. As you see, White kind of runs over him and just picks up an extra 2 yards there. And that's where a lot of the value of a running back comes from, is especially if you're of the belief of, hey, you want to be able to run the ball consistently. A real way you can do that is by turning these 3-yard gains into 5-yard gains, which is actually, on first down, from what I've seen with analytics, a good first down play is gaining 5 yards. So turning a 3-yard gain into a 5-yard gain turns a slightly negative play to a slightly positive play. So that's what you want to do. I think a play like this is another interesting one of just, again, how he can add value. What is he doing that if you put just a regular halfback in there, they wouldn't be able to do? So what's happening on this play? You have an interior defensive lineman, and watch what he's going to do. Right when this play begins, you see how, right off the bat, he gets through but is on the ground. So White is not in danger necessarily, but there's a little bit of an obstacle he has to deal with. Also, that guy, that defensive player, is moving in. He's going to shoot a gap pretty quickly and try to make a tackle on White. But watch how, despite some contact, White does not go down and is able to, again, push forward and pick up a first down there. So while we'll talk about, as a running back, you might only be gaining 1 or 2 extra yards from a bad running back to a great running back. And that's true, but, the counter to that is, hey, there are moments when that stuff does really matter. And that's also undeniably true. Something like this is an interesting example as well, where it's going to be a run to the offense's right. And, the closest unblocked Auburn player is going to do a pretty good job on this one. Watch how when White gets the football, you do see that, he goes to the outside, and there is an Auburn player who is in position to make this tackle. But what White has is he has acceleration and size. So you have to make a tackle quickly on him, and it's tough because if you don't get the exact, contact you want, you're not going to make a tackle at all. As you see, White is able to run by and still picks up a first down there. So again, this is stuff that will translate to the NFL level. Having acceleration and listen, how much will his ability to evade tackles translate to the NFL? We don't know. That's always a risk, but it should to some degree. This one's going to be another example of what I really mean is that, when it comes to NFL, defensive players, they're obviously much better at tackling than college defensive players. So some of the moves you pull off in college just won't work at the NFL level. And it has happened where I think about a guy like N'Keal Harry, who a big part of what he was able to do was evade tackles, and then that ended up not really mattering too much at the NFL level. He couldn't do that and had nothing else to his game. Now, this isn't all Zamir White does, and obviously he plays a different position than Harry, but I also think about someone like Deebo Samuel, where a big part of what he did was evade tackles, and then that really did translate to the NFL level. So it does work both ways. On this play, you see the Auburn player who I am highlighting. Watch what he's going to do here. Look, does a great job shooting through the gap, gets an immediate contact, and then fails to make a tackle. White runs through another guy as well on his way to the end zone for a touchdown. So he can do that. That's stuff he can do. He is more than capable of being able to pull things off like that. And again, it will work at the NFL level to some degree. How much? I don't know, but it'll work to some degree. Now, as for the receiving game is actually also pretty solid. Like, this is going to be a good example, I would say, where you see where he is on the field. It's a simple route. There's going to be a play action, and then he runs out to the flat to the offensive left. That's pretty much what he did, which, again, that's fine. That's most of what running backs do at the NFL level anyways. So, sure, it's cool when you have a Christian McCaffrey who can do all this interesting stuff. White is not that, but still, he can do things like this, where watch what's going to happen. Right when this play begins, he runs the play action, and then does a pretty good job of being able to get to the outside and getting a good amount of separation here. As you see, this throw gets over, and it's going to actually end up being dropped by White, which isn't ideal, but again, he got a separation. I don't think he's going to, him dropping passes wasn't the end of the world by any means, I didn't think. So, because it didn't happen too often. So that's not a real concern in terms of the drop. It is a pretty good play, though, in terms of him getting open, and I think he'll be able to do that at the NFL level. Now, the one thing I have to say, and this is why he didn't make my top 5 list of running backs, actually, is his pass blocking isn't good. It's just not. He was not very good at picking up blitzes. There were some games I saw where it's like he had a few blitz pickups and like just missed on all of them. So that's a real concern. And that's something that's definitely going to, concern you a little bit, because that really matters at the NFL level. And in fact, the one example I think of, I always, I'm a Buccaneers fan, so I tend to think with Buccaneers, on the brain a decent amount. And the one example I think of is Ronald Jones, who is this incredible runner who you had to take him off the field, because when teams saw him on the field, they start blitzing, and then Ronald Jones can't pick up the blitz, and it results in pressure, it results in turnovers, and it's a dangerous game, and you just don't want to have to deal with that. So what you would much rather have is, I think, in my opinion, is someone who can do all 3 phases of the game. Now, White can do 2 of them very well. So the idea is, and he's built enough to be able to block. It's not a physical thing necessarily. I feel like it's something you could teach him to do, and maybe to some degree he's like, listen, I'm not gonna be doing this blocking stuff until I get a paycheck. Once I start getting paid, I'll start doing this more, because I don't want to risk getting an injury and never getting money, which I would understand in that case. So maybe that's what's gonna happen. That's complete speculation, but there's a possibility of that. And if that is the case, then that makes you feel better. But it just has to be mentioned. The pass blocking, it's just not what you're drafting him for, is the pass blocking. Although looking at all of the other stuff, he was, very good. The receiving game was solid and a really good runner of the football. That's why you're drafting him. So he is kind of the replacement to Josh Jacobs. And again, when do you want to draft a running back? This feels okay to me. Like, you don't want to draft one in top 100, I don't think, especially in this class, which I think had a lot of good top 100 players. This feels all right. I think you could argue it's like, you have enough holes, and you don't really need a running back this year. But if they like him, I don't hate it. Here's what I'll say. It's not the move I would have made, but I'm not mad at it necessarily either, the way I was about the Kenneth Walker pick, because that was just way too, that was 80 picks earlier. So that's why I have, I'm different. I feel differently about it. And for all we know, Zamir White and Kenneth Walker aren't even that dissimilar prospects in my opinion. So he's an interesting player. Definitely see the appeal of him, and he, if he can get the blocking down, he could absolutely be one of the best halfbacks of this draft class. So be interesting to see what happens. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on the game of Zamir White and what he can do? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.